The human story is one of pursuit, adventure, and mystery. And one of the most perplexing questions often asked is where we came from. Well, as years go by and new evidence is unearthed, we come one step closer to our answer. And in this episode, we're going to talk about a new fossil ape that may challenge the conventional view of human origins. Yes, you heard that right. A new fossil ape that may suggest our ancestors first evolved in Europe, not Africa. This is a controversial idea that goes against the widely accepted theory that hominins, the group that includes humans, African apes, and their fossil ancestors, originated exclusively in Africa. So sit back and relax, because this one's going to be interesting. I'm your host, Mr. Earth Guy, and you're listening to Earth SciShow. Before we get into the details of this new discovery, let's take a moment to understand what we mean by hominins and why they're important for our evolution. Hominins are a branch of the primate family tree that diverged from other apes about 14 million years ago. They include living species such as humans, chimpanzees, bonobos, and gorillas, as well as extinct species like Neanderthals and Homo erectus. Hominins are distinguished from other apes by several features, such as bipedalism, which is walking on two legs, larger brains, reduced canine teeth, and more complex social behaviors. These features are thought to have evolved in response to changing environmental conditions in Africa, such as the expansion of savannas and the reduction of forests. However, not all hominins are equally related to each other. The closest living relative of humans are chimpanzees and bonobos, which share about 98% of our DNA. These three species form a subgroup which split from the ancestors of gorillas about 10 million years ago. The exact timing and location of this split is still debated, but most researchers agree that it happened in Africa. So far, so good. But what about the new fossil ape that may shake up this picture? Well, this is where things get interesting. The new fossil ape is called Anadyluvius turkey, and it was found in the Anatolian region of Turkey. And it dates back to about 8.7 million years ago, which means it lived around the same time as the split between hominins and gorillas. Anadyluvius turkey was a large ape, weighing about 50 to 60 kilograms, or about the size of a male chimpanzee. It had powerful jaws and large teeth that suggest it ate on hard or tough foods like roots. It also lived in a dry forest habitat, similar to what early humans may have experienced in Africa. But what makes Anadyluvius turkey really remarkable is its facial structure and brain case, which are well preserved in the fossil skull. These features show that the ape was closely related to African apes and humans, more so than to orangutans or Asian apes. In fact, the researchers who discovered the ape claim that it belongs to a group of early hominins that evolved in Europe and later dispersed to Africa. This is a bold claim that challenges the conventional view of human origins. How did the researchers come up with this idea? Well, they based their argument on several lines of evidence. First, they compared Anadyluvius turkey with other fossil apes from nearby areas. This includes Oranopithecus in Greece and Turkey and Gracopithecus in Bulgaria. They found that these apes shared many similarities with Anadyluvius turkey and also with African apes and humans. And then secondly, they looked at the fossil record of hominins in Africa and Eurasia. They noticed that there are very few hominin fossils in Africa between 14 million and 7 million years ago, while there are many in Europe and Anatolia. This suggests that hominins were more diverse and widespread in Eurasia than in Africa during this time. And lastly, they considered the geological and climatic changes that affected both continents. They argued that Europe and Anatolia were more suitable for hominin evolution than Africa because they had more varied habitats, more stable climates, and more opportunities for migration and gene flow. Based on these evidence, the researchers proposed that hominins first evolved in Europe from ancestors that came from Western or Central Europe. They then dispersed into Africa between 7 million years and 9 million years ago, where they diversified into different lineages such as chimpanzees, bonobos, and humans. Now, this is a fascinating scenario that would rewrite the history of our evolution. But is it true? Well, not everyone is convinced by this hypothesis. Many experts have criticized it for being based on weak or incomplete data. They point out that there are many problems with the fossil evidence, the phylogenetic analysis, and the biogeographic assumptions of the study. For example, Some critics say that Anadaluvius turkey and other European apes are not really hominins, but rather distant relatives of orangutans. They argue that these apes have more primitive features than African apes and humans, and that they are more likely to be recent immigrants of Africa rather than ancestors of hominins. Other critics say that the lack of hominin fossils in Africa is not a sign of their absence, but rather a result of poor preservation and sampling. They suggest that there are many potential hominin sites in Africa that have not been explored or excavated yet, and future discoveries may fill the gaps in the fossil record. Still, other critics say that the environmental and climatic factors that influence hominin evolution are more complex and variable than the study assumes. They point out that both Africa and Eurasia experienced significant changes in their landscapes, vegetation, and fauna over time, and that these changes have had effects on hominins in different ways. In short, there are many questions and uncertainties about the origins and evolution of hominins, and the new fossil ape from Turkey does not provide a definitive answer. It does, however, offer a new perspective and a new challenge for researchers to test and explore. And that's what science is all about: finding new evidence, proposing new hypotheses, testing them with more data, and revising them as needed. Science is not a static or dogmatic enterprise, but a dynamic and creative one. And sometimes it can be controversial and surprising. But that's all for today's episode on Earth SciShow. I hope you enjoyed learning about this new fossil ape and its implications of our evolution. If you want to learn more about this topic, you can check out my TikTok where I've made a video on this, or go directly to the journal which is showcased in that video. Thank you for listening, and please share this podcast with your friends and family. It really helps the channel grow. You've been listening to Earth SciShow, and I'm your host, Mr. Earth Guy. And remember, stay curious.